So here's another little trick that I developed for places that you want to put something, add a piece of metal, and it's a little awkward. You haven't got any way to clamp it. You haven't got any way to hold it until you get it tacked into place. And I'm sure everybody's come across that that does any fabrication sooner or later. What I've done here is I have a 90-degree flange on the skin here, but on this piece that was part of the original skin, I had to grind off that flange in order to get this to come off. So I have to replace that flange, and I'd like ideally to do it right here with it on the car so I can make sure that it's in the proper location. So what I've done is I've cut the piece that I need. You can see it's got a little squiggle in it, and I have a little excess metal that I leave on the piece, and I cut it till it's very, very small, just enough to create a handle that when I go and put this piece in here, I have something to hold it until I get a couple of tacks on it. And then what I'll do is I'll just twist or just cut this piece off and then grind it off. It gives me a little handle to hold the piece. And this works in a lot of awkward spots where you're trying to get some little piece of metal in a crevice and you try to figure out a way to hold it there. This way you can hold it with your hand and the heat won't get to it until you can get at least tacked onto the tacked onto the car. And then take this little handle off and then finish welding it up. So with the door skin on and hammered over on the edges and hung back on and welded up at the bottom and permanently back on the car for the last time, it's time to start working on the rocker. At the bottom you can see that the quarter panel rolls down under to the towards the pinch weld, and I have to do the same thing with a section of rocker from here to the end of the door to complete the roll and connect it to the existing rocker. What I needed to do though was to project a line in that will give me the location of where it has to go 90 degrees in to the existing rocker on the car. So what I did was I set up two 2x4s, cut them to the height that they needed to be, used a spacer underneath to establish my door gap at the lower end on both sides. And once that was done, I drilled and cleat-coed a temporary 90-degree flange made out of just some scrap sheet metal. That gives me a nice straight edge so that when I open the door, I have this ledge that I was able to take and scribe a line across here. Now that'll be where the rocker will roll up and then has to come back and return in to that point for it to be dead level. And of course this is a lot larger than it will be, but this gives me a pretty good chance at getting this lower door gap as even as possible. And straight back to the existing rocker. So that's just the way I went about transferring the bottom of the door with the door gap to the inside of the rocker. So now I can proceed and make a piece that will cover up all these holes. A 90-degree piece will come out, and that piece will have a step in it to accept. This is the rocker, the lower rocker. And has a flange over here which will sit on top, and it'll be welded up there. But this lower piece will have to be glued on and riveted, as will this piece here, because of the fact that this is filled with that styrofoam. You can see that styrofoam that they blow into these rockers, and that will catch fire if you start welding onto this piece. So have to avoid setting this thing on fire at this point, hopefully. So that's what I'm up to. So here's what's going on here. You see I've got this flange now, the permanent flange, temporarily riveted on in 3 places. And then that comes down in an L shape. And then this is the rocker. section here. You can see that that's rolled under this way and temporarily held into place with these clecos. And then this is going to need a little bit more bend this way. It's kind of kicking up this way. But what that does is now it allows me to make a mark on the top side here and hopefully put in a step so that that'll come out flush with that flange. And this is how it ends up looking on the bottom side. Now here I'll have to follow this line of the door down and cut this off so that when the fender comes in, the fender will go all the way down to the bottom and bolt onto the bottom side. There's a couple of bolt holes there. But that's pretty much what I was after as far as trying to complete the curvature of this door panel down under to the pinch weld. Just thought I'd give you a look at what this looks like finished up before I prime the inside, get it ready to go back on the car. As you can see here, this flange is welded on. This goes to the car itself, this piece here. And in the front here you can see I have some closure pieces that I had to put on there to finish it out, so it'll be all sealed up. There won't be any cavity in the front there to collect any garbage. So that's about it. So I just got to get the backside primed so that it's protected once I glue it on there, and should be good to go. Okay, so the rocker is now bonded to the car. You can see it's all riveted and also is adhered with some panel adhesive. It's also riveted all the way along the bottom side, and also I use some panel adhesive there. And I have to grind that all off there eventually when I get to doing the body work, but I've also sealed up some of these seams with this epoxy. It's pretty good. It doesn't shrink back like Bondo. It creates a pretty good base where there's places where you don't want to do a complete, you want to seal it up, but you don't want to do a weld it up completely. Anyway, I've got to swing around to the other side now because I never did finish this on the other side of the car. But in the meanwhile, I got sidetracked. Out of curiosity, started to fit the plastic inner tubs back in the car. Now these are not the inner tubs that came with the car. These came off of the Magnum, which these are a lot thicker. This plastic is a little bit more durable. The ones that came with the Challenger were really just paper thin. I mean, I understand they're probably trying to cut costs and also trying to cut the weight of the car, but I mean, it just seemed like a kind of a ridiculous place to get a little cheesy. But this stuff is like, it's literally like toilet paper. So I'm using the ones off the Magnum, and I've started to trim them to fit to the insides here. It's a little more complex on how I'm going to extend them out over here. I've already done it. You can hardly see, I don't have enough light in there, but anyway, I'll have to extend the plastic out here. It's basically just to keep most of the dirt and the debris and the mud out of the inner structure and protect like the suspension components and stuff from dirt and road debris and rocks and stuff like that. Also, in the upper portion here, there's the charcoal filter or the recovery filter for the fuel system. So obviously you don't want to be slinging rocks up at that. There's electrics and everything else up there. So it's essential that they go back in, and it really kind of neatens up the inner wheel hole. So yeah, so I didn't finish this rocker on this side or weld up the bottom of the door yet. So I'll be getting to that. One last shot so you could see what the rocker looks like relative to the door. And of course here I still have to grind off all that excess goop that came out of the seams when I adhered it to the car. But that's the intent of how I wanted the rocker to finish out at the bottom. And that's that. Thank you.